All right, everybody. We've got two very special guests for y'all. Everybody, please welcome back to the show, Jackson Lanzing and Collin Kelly, the Hivemind. Welcome, gentlemen.
Yep.
Thanks so much. Glad to be back.
Thank you for having us.
So is this Hivemind thing like stuck now? Because I've seen like articles.
God, I hope so. I hope so. 15 years of having an issue with branding. I pray to God that Hivemind's about to start.
Yeah, it's one of those funny things, man, where there are very few, if any, ongoing writing partnerships in comics. They don't really exist. There have been a few like temporary ones over the years, and then there was, I think the closest one to us was Lonnie and Zach, and when they started doing solo work, and Lonnie mostly moved outside of comics, and I really feel like I caused that. I saw them at Emerald City that one year, and I came up to Lonnie and Zach, and I was like, guys, it's so cool that there's someone else doing this. You're the only other guys. And I think I remember saying, like, how do you handle the branding problem? Because if you Google my name, you get a photo of me, but all the text results are Collin.
Oh,
Google thinks I'm Collin Kelly.
Under your name, it says Collin Kelly.
Yeah.
Our SEO is so borked at this point because it's all pulled from so many different pieces of data, and
AI has no idea what to make of it.
And AI has no idea what to make of it. Look, early on in our careers, there was the question of should we adopt a portmanteau, right? Like, we've been writing together for 15 years, comics for half of that, but we've been writing together forever and have been friends for even longer than that. So the big question early on was, will we just smush it? Will we become Jackson Lansley, right? No, probably not.
Yeah, right.
Like, will we, there's some great guys in the industry right now. The only other actually partnership that I know of are the Supple Boys. They go by the Supple Boys, which is a great other nomenclature.
But they don't credit as that. You know what
I mean?
They don't
credit as that.
And that was, I think, the problem. We didn't credit as Hivemind early. So by the time that we were into Lanzing Kelly land, right, or Kelly Lanzing land, depending on which book you're reading and how the credits were arranged, because sometimes his in front, sometimes I'm in front. We used to switch it every time, but Marvel does everything alphabetically, so that makes it harder. It's been kind of wild. We asked about a year and a half ago a couple of retailers that we really love. We said, hey, if we just started crediting as Hivemind tomorrow, if we went and every second printing of our book went that way, and every time that we reprinted something, we just changed it to Hivemind, would that be a huge problem for you guys? And universally we got, yes, that would be a huge problem for us. They were like, we would have to rebuild your fan base from scratch. Don't do that. Sorry, too late. And so we're like, all right, fuck it. But like, Hivemind was kind of our, it was something that people would say about us. So we took it and sort of made it official and really popularized it ourselves maybe 5-6 years ago, just because we saw the writing on the wall and we're like, unless we give somebody an easy way to talk about us, the way that this is going to sound self-aggrandizing, I don't mean it this way, but the way that you talk about the Gallagher brothers as Oasis, right? Or you talk about whenever Tom York and Johnny Greenwood are together, it's called Radiohead, right?
Right.
Unless we give this a band name, people are always going to be flubbing it up, and they're not really gonna, it's just going to be harder to remember two names back to back like that in an industry that really lives on solo artist. I think comics writers work a lot like pop stars in that respect. We have little individual brands, we have things we do, and I think that when you're an individual, it's a lot easier. When there's two of you, man, you got to find a way. So Hivemind's what's stuck. I'm happy it's stuck. We'll take it, man.
Well, it's the whole thing. You can't give yourself a nickname. We got something we call ourselves. It's the name of our company, but it is not what everyone we've ever told it to, they're like, oh my God, that's so pretentious. And we're like, fuck you, we like it. But the fans, we knew we started to have real heads when they'd come up to our table and be like, I love Hivemind. You guys, okay, cool, we're cooking with this. And sorry, you were just making a cute little goof. And we spun this off, but we do not get to talk about the branding challenges of being a partnership in comics very often. So you just scratched a scab and we bled all over you.
Dude, it's perfect. No, that's awesome. Yeah.
We were just talking about earlier how like Kirkman and Moore are taking over Transformers, and neither of us are Transformers fans, but you damn well better believe we're going to be reading Transformers because two of our favorite creators are on it. Like, that's more important than the IP anymore.
I mean,
especially comics.
I don't read. I don't think I've read an Outsiders book before you guys wrote one. And I think I mean you guys have written quite a bit of stuff since we last got to talk. So like, we've wrapped up Outsiders, which even brought in some characters, I think, from Wildstorm, if I'm remembering correctly.
All over the place,
all over the place, yeah. So like that's like I wasn't a huge Wildstorm fan either, but I'll read the stuff you guys are running. So yeah, having Hivemind on stuff does help. And it's like,
I look, that's how I read too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think in a lot of ways, that's how most like entrenched comic book people read is they look for who's doing it. And they're like, I'm not going to necessarily read X-Men sight unseen. I know there are people who will, but I know that like, for me, I'll pick up X-Men when Hickman's writing it. You know what I mean? I'll pick up X-Men when Morrison's writing it. I'll pick up X-Men when Jed McKay's writing it. Like, I'll pick it up when a writer I really respect, who I think is doing incredible work, goes and does something over there. Like the example I use now, and partially just because it makes me feel like I was ahead of the curve. I come from the old punk scene. I love knowing shit before it got cool. It's one of my worst qualities is that hipster aspect. But man, I'll read anything Dennis Camp writes, right? And I've been saying that since Maxwell's Demons at fucking Vault when he was with us. I looked at him. I said to his face, I was like, "You're going to be the best in our generation," and he is. Like, I knew it. You saw his work. I was like, "You're doing something fucking singular. You're doing something really unique. You're doing it in your own. It's the way you work. It's the way you write. It's the way you work with your artists. It's the way you think about story. It's really different than what we do." And I admired the shit out of it. And I just thought that's going to be, I'll just read whatever you write. So it doesn't matter who it is. Like, man, I'll read your Bloodshot run, man. I don't like run out the door to read Bloodshot, but I'll read it when Jeff Lemire writes it. I'll read it when Dennis Camp writes it. Like, why not? So I will always hope, I think that's our hope, is that if you see our names on something, you know that we've brought what we bring. And what do we bring? I couldn't tell you. That is, I think, for other people to understand. But I hope that we bring something that is singular and unique, and that somebody comes to the work for the same way that they do, that my favorite writers do, the same way my favorite creators do. And God knows I'll be reading that new Transformers run. I'm reading Transformers anyway.
Okay.
Because Daniel Warren Johnson is.
Yeah, he's good. He's pretty good too, right?
Yeah, he's great.
He's pretty good.
So I'm already reading Transformers, but after he was leaving, we were talking to Ben Abernathy like last week about something, and I said, Ben, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like, no more Daniel Warren Johnson. And he like smiled at us and he was like, "Don't worry, guys, I got this covered."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, okay, who are you doing?" He's like, "I can't tell you, but you'll know soon." And then that news dropped and I was like, "Well, okay."
That's a goddamn good combination. I do not care about Transformers really at all.
I have no interest.
But I mean, like, okay, is peanut butter and jelly going big time? Well, then, like, I gotta eat it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You two might be the closest to anyone that knows this human being. So solve a problem we've had on this podcast.
Yeah. Okay. This is a trend we think we're
Dan Mora.
Yeah.
How many clones of him are out there creating things right now?
Oh, dude.
How many of them?
I don't. So I don't know Dan. I've worked with Dan. He did our covers. He did our covers on for a couple of books here and there. I love Dan. I think he's incredible as a creator. Yeah. I have no idea how he does what he does. None at all.
I've seen people with good work ethic that have like good work, but it's tough to do 12 issues in a year for an artist at all. Mm-hmm. I've seen Dan Mora do some of the best art in the industry and do 18 issues.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, is it possible that it's like a Hans Zimmer or like Charles Dickens situation where he has or Hugo Chavez, Ron Hugo.
Hugo Chavez did have a bunch of people.
Who worked under him.
That's pretty good.
Like he's actually in industry. I know Bear McCreary kind of works like this, right? Like he's there to. Is it possible that Dan is just there to like add the zhuzh, but he actually has a whole army?
He's got a guy that just draws the hands.
Yeah, he's got a hand guy. Exactly. He's got the horse guy. Horse guy just like, all right, I'm ready.
Yeah. It's like the manga business. He just does the characters. Someone else does the background.
But I think that's what's insane is that clearly that's not what's happening. Like you look at his work and it's so specifically like, oh no, that's just what he's doing. I liken it a lot to, there is an artist I've worked with that has that same kind of work ethic, which is Carmen Carnera, right? Mm-hmm. Carmen will do every issue of any book she's on. She's actually really insistent about it. The only reason she didn't do the Cold War issues of Sentinel, which is the only issues of Sentinel she didn't draw, were because of it was like a weird scheduling snafu where that book got crunched up and needed somebody to come in while she was doing 750. And it was only because of that. And she was pissed about it. You could tell she was like, oh, I really wish I could do this. And she's done every issue of Exceptional, right? She's like, if you talk to Carmen and you're like, hey, what do you do? And she's like, I'm drawing comics, right? She's pushing, she's making it, she's doing all the covers. So she's always doing her own covers. She's doing her own interior work. She does it all on her lonesome. It's a really remarkable thing to see. And I think as a pair that, I don't think our work ethic is so slack either. Like we were doing,
you guys work a lot.
I think the only answer I can truthfully give to that is that when you are doing your dream job, like when you're doing something where you're like, man, I fought really hard to get to this level, to do this thing, you have to re-engage with a part of yourself that loved it when you started. Right. That enjoyed this thing as a fan, that enjoyed this thing as a kid, that enjoyed this thing in a really like primal way. And you have to write to that. You have to let that spill out. And I feel like, writing and art take two different sets of time. But I do think that probably if I had to guess, the way that somebody like Dan Mora does it is he looks at what he's doing and goes, holy shit, I'm so psyched I get to do this. Yeah. And leans into that part of himself. Because that's certainly what we've had to do. And when we don't, I think it shows in the work, And so I think overall it's always been a matter of trying to remember that thing that brought you here in the first place. That love and that thing about comics that you couldn't get anywhere else.
Yep.
Now you get to give your lifeblood to that. Like that's not just a privilege; it's a joy, and it should be.
Yeah. Because there's got to be days where you wake up and you're like, I don't care what Kirk does today. I just want to do this.
Time to make the donuts does happen. It doesn't happen on Star Trek.
I feel like the caveat just before we move off Dan Mora though is also it's kind of the secret of us. It's the secret of a lot of prodigiously content producing creators, which is an editor who loves and respects you. Yeah. Right, like notice Dan ain't working. God love you, House of Ideas. But Marvel's turnaround schedule is so aggressive. The fact that Carmen can do that at Marvel is literally that's the goddamn magic trick. Yeah, because it is a big machine, and that Dan, wherever he is working, like if he's working with Ben Abernathy, right, like one of the greatest, most competent editors of all time, who also an editor who needs to be able to throw their elbows out and say, my team needs this space, right? It's what Heather Antos is able to do with us on all the Star Trek books. We've had some DC editorial who was able to throw some elbows. It's very hard to throw elbows over at Marvel unless you're up at the top to give your guys that space. But I'm sure Dan, when the work's that good, and apparently he's just a super fucking nice guy too. Clear the way. Give him the space he needs to fucking cook. He's literally one of the greatest. He's one of the greatest to ever do it.
Yep. That's a lot. I think that was a way better answer than we expected if he's just cloning himself. So
I'm going with he's cloning himself.
If he's hey,
we got a really nice, thoughtful answer out of that.
50-50. Who knows who's right?
Who knows? He still could be cloned now. I know we touched on it a little bit, so I'll try to keep us back on track. But we talked a little bit about X-Men and how you guys are, you're playing in that universe. You're just coming off giant size X-Men in May, I believe. Chris and I'm going to say we're not X-Men guys. And I think and you don't have to convince us today, but I think like our reservations with it is the amount of X-Men books out today, just like the amount of continuity there of all these characters coming in and doing these things. And I did look through your giant X-Men issue a little bit. I knew some of these characters coming in. Can you talk about, what you've been doing with X-Men And is it a good jumping on point for new readers? Like, when is the time to jump in? Because it seems a little overwhelming at some points. But
so let's just give you let's answer the first part first and the second part second. What we are doing over in the X office for about the past year or so, a little change more. We had the privilege and honor of being part of the From the Ashes relaunch era. Mm-hmm. There are some really top tier, they're all top tier books, honestly. The entire launch, while there were a lot of books, they were all absolute bangers. We were privileged enough to take Kamala Khan and many of the Academy X, air quote, kids, Prodigy, Laura Kinney as Wolverine, one of the Cuckoos, right? A Knoll, my favorite little green lizard boy, and basically take them to New York in the aftermath of the Krakoan era. After Krakoa, the greatest utopia that mutants have ever seen, their great city, their great Camelot, yeeted itself out of reality. With many of them still choosing to be aboard. And the X-Men, the mutants left over, are dealing with all of the bullshit that ramificates out of that. Our heroes are in New York. They are building not a superhero team, but a superhero community, which was really our focus. Take what was built out of Krakoa and that kind of the binding that the mutant community really had, and bring that energy into a book, not to forget Krakoa, but to remember the lessons there. And that was really the core. Yes, we had some bitching action, and yes, empath and all sorts of rad stuff happens in our book, and people should absolutely go check it out. But at its core, it is a story about people who happen to be mutants and what that means to hold yourselves together. So that book, really, we went for the heartstrings on that one. It's got some incredible, we were incredibly proud of it, and really happy how it got to go, even though it did end at 10 issues.
The in terms of jumping on points and the larger conversation about like, wow, there are a lot of X books. Agree with you. First off, just like base level, I don't have a lot of time to read comics anymore. I wish I did. I wish I was swimming in comic book time. But as soon as Colin and I are done on a comic, we're on a video game. And when we're not on that video game, we're rewriting our movie. And then when we're not rewriting that movie, we're pitching a TV show. So we're insane. Like our schedule is bonkers. We wrote a middle grade novel in the middle of all of it last year. I don't have the time to sit there and read 30 books on a pull list anymore.
Two middle grade novels, the sequel of which will be out early next year.
I was mostly just talking about the sequel. We wrote the other one 5 years ago. We don't get to brag about that one anymore. Though it is called Thor Quest, and now there's all these like weird rumors that there's a MCU project called Thor Quest, and I got questions. But anyway,
oh man.
But we are we don't have a lot of time to read. So what I did on the X-Men line was I tried to keep up with every book in the line while we were in it, while I was getting those books for free in my inbox. You know what I mean? And I still fell behind, right? I still wasn't able to keep ahead of every single one of those books. I read them where I needed to manage my own work, but the only one that I was reading consistently across board, I was reading the main three, the core three. So I was reading X-Men by McKay, I was reading Uncanny by Simone, and I was reading Exceptional by Ewing. Those three books are the only ones you really need to read. I wish I didn't have to say that. I wish I could say, oh, you got to read all the books, or oh, there was a lot more.
That's just the reality.
Book called X-Men, and the reason those books exist is so that people can read the book called X-Men, right? Like that's what that's there to do. So if you wanted to jump onto X-Men at any given point, I would look to core title. I would look to Uncanny. I would look to X-Men, and I would look to Exceptional. In terms of when is a good place to jump on, I would actually say you're getting up to it. Okay. Our giant size X-Men books are actually a really interesting jumping on point, if only because they take you through the entirety of X-Men history. Giant size #1 returns to the formative moment of the original X-Men team and sort of recontextualizes that. The second volume takes you into Dark Phoenix, the third into Age of Apocalypse, which just came out this week, which I'm extremely proud of. I really think Age of Apocalypse hits above its weight. The reviews were insane. I'm really proud of that book.
Awesome.
Sales were good. I don't know what to do with these books. It's so nice. People are being really nice about what should be a suicide mission of a book.
Yep.
Which is like retconning all of X-Men history. Like, we should be getting death threats. We're not. It's really nice.
I'm staying off the internet.
Yeah. That helps too.
Fucking wise. House of M is coming out in a couple of weeks. And again, I think it punches above its weight. That one's wild because that's us getting to return to an event that we read while it was happening. You know, like that came out when Colin and I were becoming friends. So it's kind of wild to get to return to it and like let our Bendis freak flag fly a little bit. Like, Bendis is probably our greatest inspiration as a writer, and getting to dig into that has been wild. And then finally Giant Size 2 with finally here after 50 years coming out from us and Adam Kubert returning.
Yeah.
Those books take you through the entirety of X-Men history, so they can be a great jumping on point, and they'll launch you into Hellfire Vigil, which is out. I think actually is going to come out before our ending comes out. I think it comes out this week.
We got a little delayed. That's irritating.
Yeah,
but it will lead.
But because of that flip, and because there's some stuff that's about to swing after this that we can't talk about, that we're not involved in. Like,
right.
This is going to be a really interesting point to jump onto X-Men, because they're about to start a bunch of new stuff. If you wanted to jump onto X-Men, especially if you're just reading core titles, which most of the other titles have ended, like it really is only core titles now, except for like the ones that are in there like later issues. So I would just lean into core title. I would go to that. I would see how you enjoy those three and see what happens as they build the thing that they're going to build. From a purely like Hivemind centric perspective, we're done after Giant Size. After Hellfire Vigil, we wrote the first 5 pages of Hellfire Vigil, and then that's going to be the last of our X-Men work, at least for now. It was a joy. We really kind of got to do a lot of the stuff that we wanted to do. It was an incredible time. I think we found that overall, working inside of that large a machine and functioning as a small part of that allowed for us to do some really interesting, unique, cool stuff that did tend to fly a little bit under the radar. And so as we looked at our output from the last couple of years and thought about how we wanted to re-engage with that joy, as we were talking about, right, of creating this stuff, of how much we love it, of really leaning into the stuff that we could get incredibly excited about and we knew wouldn't be like covered in a mountain of other stuff, that something that could really live on its own and be its own thing. And looking at what our friends are doing over at Absolute, I think what Scott and Dennis and Jason and like these creators who are alternately friends of ours or mentors of ours or people we've worked with before are all doing incredible stuff over on that line. Same thing with Ultimate. And I think creating something that allowed for us to have something that felt fundamentally like a jumping on point, something that we could sell to literally anyone. And I don't need to go on this 5-minute essay about, how do you get into it?
Right.
That's why we stepped away from X-Men, stepped away from Marvel in general. Really, we're stepping away from everything in comics, except for a couple of creator-owned things that haven't been announced yet. And of
course, the beautiful book.
And Star Trek: The Last Starship, which is, I think, to me, the most exciting thing we've done in years. I say that as somebody who just got to work with Adam Kubert. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. That's cool.
This has been such a joy of a book to put together. And in large part, it's because I can turn to literally anyone. You don't need to know what a Star Trek is. You don't need to know anything. And I can say, you can read this book. You can get on board this book. Nothing about this book requires homework. Nothing about this book requires you to know anything. Get on board. We're going to show you why this is awesome. And ideally, it's going to make you feel the way that X-Men felt when Morrison was on it, or the way that X-Men felt when Hickman was on it, right? When you come into this thing and you go, damn, I never got how cool that was until now. And that's really our fundamental 100% objective on Star Trek, and why we've now put all of our effort into it. It's the only book we're doing. It's been an incredible joy.
If I could rewind you just a little bit, because there's a book I want to talk to you about with Marvel.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm calling the Bucky Barnes saga for you two.
Yeah,
that just came to an end. You guys put the character kind of back in its original form somewhat. Yep. I mean, obviously we had changes.
Emotionally richer, but physically pretty close.
But you gave him back his arm and moved on and gave it to somebody else who's doing a fantastic book now. How did that feel to have that you had that great arc starting with Cap, ending with the New Thunderbolts, and just having that whole thing kind of come full circle, telling your story and getting to do what you told us you were trying to do, I don't know, 3 or 4 interviews ago, however long it was when we first talked about Captain America when you guys were doing that. How does that feel now that that's all over? Because as a fan, it's so satisfying to the point where I was upset to see that you weren't on the New Thunderbolts or the New Avengers, as we're calling it now.
Same. I mean, not same about not being on New Avengers. I'm psyched. Sam Humphrey's another one of these guys who's just we've been friends since before we were doing comics. So I got to hang out with him the week that book came out and celebrate with him. It's a joy.
It was a great first issue.
In all honesty, truly, at least from my perspective, it's the thing that lets me walk away from our sort of like the phase that we've been in at Marvel. And this isn't to say we won't come back. I would love to do more Marvel. Mm-hmm. Right now,
we're calling it our Marvel Phase 1.
Yeah, we've walked away from Phase 1 at Marvel, and I think if I look at it, I think there were some things that I wish had been able to run longer. I wish there were things that had been able to deepen more. I think we tried to do some really cool stuff with Power Man, that we were fighting a zeitgeist the entire time, and I think like that was always a bit of a trouble spot for us. I wish that had gone better. I'm really proud of the books. I think the books are incredible. I just think, it's like didn't seem like anyone was reading.
I think people needed to get more excited about Sad Guardians of the Galaxy. That was vegetables they should have been eating. You can't just have popcorn all the time. Guardians fans.
I put our Guardians run up against any run of that on that book. I think our Guardians run fucking rips. But
that's good.
But of all the things that we did at Marvel that I am proud of. The thing that actually made it feel like we could walk away head held high was the Revolution saga, which is what we call it internally, right? Mm-hmm. We look at that Bucky Barnes story that we managed to tell over effectively 4 different titles: Devil's Reign, Winter Soldier, Captain America, through the event on Cap, into Thunderbolts World Strike, into Thunderbolts Doomstrike. That shouldn't have been possible. That's the kind of shit you just don't get to do a lot. And the fact that we got to do it, the fact that we got to hold that character up, and that as we were closing it off, we got to go to the Thunderbolts movie and see the costume in the end credit sequence and know this is going to live beyond us.
That's so cool.
Now permanently to some degree in the minds of people who've never picked up a comic book. That was a really beautiful way to end that time. I am incredibly thankful to every Bucky Barnes fan who showed up for this, for every Cap fan who showed up for it, and for everybody who gave us at Marvel, who gave us the room and time to make that story happen. I think Alana Smith really just deserves so much credit for being willing to give us this room and standing by us the whole time to create something incredible together. I'm really, it's just a real joy to have worked with her and to have been able to build that story out over the time that we did. So yeah, I mean, how does it make us feel? To me, it's the best thing. It's the best thing about our time at Marvel. I'm so proud of it. I'm so happy about it. I'm so thankful for it. I hope someday they put it together and do a big trade. I want a Revolution Saga hardcover, right? That's that's the cherry on top. In 20 years, I hope somebody they make that as one of these library edition things so that people can go back to it and read it as it was designed to be read, as one big story about Steve and Bucky and their kind of argument of dialectics. And I think it's incredible that we got to do it. I'm really proud.
And I hate to, I mean, it's been a few weeks. I feel like people should have read it, but that last moment where Steve shows up,
that's the ball game, isn't it?
Man. I loved it, man. It's so great. I literally in that moment, I'm like, I can't believe I couldn't believe that he showed up.
If you're just reading Thunderbolts, you hit that moment, you're like, oh, cool. All right. I love Steve Rogers. But if you're a real head, if you've been there from the beginning, you know that is the payoff to something that's set up 50 issues ago, right? 4 books and 50 issues ago, we set that hug up. And the return of Steve, the return of that arm, you asked like, oh, well, how does it make us feel? Yes, I'll echo everything Jack said. It's like, that's the monumental work that we were secretly able to accomplish, which just feels like we pulled a trick on Daddy Marvel. We didn't. They knew what we were doing the whole time. And once again, Alana Smith has been our champion, and she absolutely knew what we were doing as she kind of pulls strings behind the scenes. But that is an opportunity that not a lot of writers get. So that was very cool. But also very cool with a story about brotherhood. Like, I think there's a reason our Kang hit, because we have bad dads. And so telling a story that was very real about bad dads, I think people really responded to that. And I think people really responded to our Bucky and Steve partnership and stories, because we ourselves are two brothers from another mothers, right? Like we are bonded in a way that those two, we've imprinted on each other in a way that those two guys have. And one of us isn't the Bucky and one of us isn't the Steve. We get that question a lot. And it's like, look, man, we're both strong and we're both messes. Right. And coming from that position of being able to kind of write both characters and love them both equally, I think it was just really an incredible opportunity, not just to tell an absolutely kick-ass superhero story, not just a chance to evolve and mature a character who has been spinning his wheels in self-doubt and self-recrimination for a decade and a half at least. Right. But also to tell a story that was just so quintessentially us. Right. We have problems circling back around. Right. What is a Hivemind book? We ask our fans all the time and they're like, oh, good. And we're like, well, thank you for that. But also, I think that a lot of times it's about the relationships at the core of it. And when we have the opportunity to write brotherhood, and, brotherhood has nothing to do with gender. Right.
Yep.
When you can write that kind of bond, I think our work really shines. And I think it shone through in the Revolution Saga.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, before we ask any more questions about anything else, we're going to talk Star Trek now. I mean, that's the big thing hitting. And I will say this, comics are just booming right now, guys. Our pull lists, our read lists right now are huge. I mean, we read a lot of books. Obviously, we have the show, but and I took some time. I finally got to sit down and read your issue 1 of Star Trek from 2022. I said, okay, I got to see what this hype is.
Buddy.
So I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan. I love Next Generation. I am a Next Generation fan. I watched that growing up, still watch the reruns. And issue 1, and I think you're kind of good. Well, you talked about doing this with the last Starship that's coming out. I read the issue and I was like, oh yeah, I know some of these characters. Oh yeah, I've heard of some of these old school characters. And then at the end of it, I was like, oh, that was just a good, complete story. And now I got to read 30 something more issues. I'm like, damn it, guys. But
yeah, you do.
Welcome to the Theseus, buddy.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't need to know that much about Star Trek. It was just a good, complete story. But then some of those characters pop up and I'm like, oh man, he's chatting with Picard. Oh, Scotty. I know Scotty. And all those things happening. So, I mean, you guys have had success with Star Trek, obviously, and I don't think I guess Star Trek's probably not an easy fan base to please. You could answer that. I don't know if there's a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of rules around space in Star Trek, but what was your approach to the last Starship? Was it a similar thing? Like you said, you want to kind of please everybody, I guess.
Whoa! Hold on.
Not please everybody. Not please everybody.
Well, so you ask about Star Trek fans, and it's actually really interesting because you'd be like, "Oh my God, isn't that a tempestuous fandom? It's like one of the first and one of the oldest."
Right.
But it kicks ass. The secret of Trek fans is, unless you are an absolute troglodyte who does not understand media, you understand that the core of Star Trek is this optimistic acceptance of things and others. You might stick your heels in and, Kirk might be your guy or Picard might be your guy. You're going to have your show. But if you're writing a story with empathy and authenticity and are able to get all the Star Trek shit right. That is the thing, is Star Trek is one of the longest ongoing shared storytelling universes around, right? Arthur Conan Doyle did it, but it's not exactly something that we'd seen much of. And there's a lot to respect, but it all makes sense, right? Mutant X-Men fans, they're a handful because X-Men continuity doesn't make sense. Okay. Right. So you can argue, you can latch onto it. But when it comes to Star Trek, it's my guys, if you want to argue with me, that's cool. You better have more than Memory Alpha to back you up, because we know this shit, and so do you. So it's like mutual respect and understanding based on shared goals and ideals. We are Star Trek fans, so we always just write the Star Trek book that we want. And then other Star Trek fans are like, holy shit, this is just what I want. It's like, of course it is. We're you, buddy.
Yeah. Star Trek is one of those fascinating projects where what we did and sort of how we did it for the last 32 issues is extremely different than what we are about to do and how we are doing it. It's the only place where we've gotten to apply two fundamentally different objectives and storytelling mechanisms to the same idea. So to run that down for you really quickly and kind of answer the second part of your question, because I echo everything Colin said. Star Trek fans, turns out they rip. They're awesome. I love Star Trek. Star Trek fans are kind of like Star Wars fans. They just love it. And they do kind of want to get into it. But unlike Star Wars fans, they have way less mainstream penetration. Like Star Trek fans still know that they're the nerds in the room. And so there's a certain amount of oh, we're all in it together. We all love this together. And I have some great stories about that. We can talk about that later. I do want to talk about Last Starship though. So for the first 32, you just read Star Trek 2022, number 1. Incredible. Awesome. Before we did that, there was year 5. No, I'm more awesome.
Yeah, I know. It is awesome. We can say that.
Before that, we did Star Trek year 5. And I think it's instructive to talk about that as we get through it. So Star Trek Year 5 was our first real Star Trek work. We had done an 8-page story with Sonny Liu about Data and his cat in a Waypoint issue. That's what got us all started. I think it's fucking incredible. It goes viral every once in a while still. It's all up on Imgur. It's called My Human Is Not, a story by Spot. If you haven't read it, you should go read it. It's great. That one I will say is great because that story totally fucking rips. We should have put it up for the Eisner. So the second thing we did was Star Trek Year 5. Star Trek Year 5 was straight up a TOS cover version, right? It was like, can you do the original series? Like, can you do it without fucking it up, without breaking it down? Can you do the best possible version of the original series using modern political frameworks and modern metaphors and all that stuff, but using the whole original crew and nothing else? And can you do that to tell the final story of that first 5-year mission? Because Star Trek got canceled at season 3, so it never got its 5th season. We're like, let's
tell it respectfully and authentically, not in a way that might resonate with like modern readers. It's like we need to hit the people where they live. You're looking for the TOSs, and it's like it's important to remember. Go ahead, yeah.
Well, so that I actually am kind of making the opposite point. I think what was really interesting about Year 5 was that we were making it accessible to modern readers. And what happened, which was really surprising, I think, to everybody at Star Trek, was instead of doing what traditionally people have done, which is treating this like it's in a little museum box and not touching it, we were like, what if we took risks? What if we took swings? What if we brought in a new character? What if we played with these characters as if they were more modern dramatic characters? What if Kirk was going on a season-long character arc, which he never could have had at TOS, where he is understanding his own desire not to be a captain or to not be an admiral and to stay on board this ship, even though his whole life is telling him to go. And what Star Trek and I think IDW and even us and the rest of the writers' room were really surprised by was how much people showed up for that and how much they were willing to take that story outside of the museum box. And I think that proved something to Star Trek, which was, hey, actually, you can push this. You can make not like extensions of the TV show, but you can make comic books, right? And those comics can function like comics. So that's why we went to do Star Trek 2022. Was what we call flagship. Right. The whole Star Trek run was designed around the idea of like, okay, now let's try a new experiment. We did the version of it where we gave you the show through the sort of, not just Hivemind, because we worked with a bunch of different writers on that book, but through a character-focused modern television lens. Now, let's do a book that takes all our favorite characters from Star Trek and does a comic, does an ongoing comic book series with 6-issue arcs and 3-issue arcs and 1-shots and annuals and 2-shots and summer events and all kinds of stuff that you would imagine from a big 2 comic. Let's apply all of those lessons to Star Trek, rotating art casts, all kinds of stuff, right? Let's get people removed from having to do likenesses all the time. Let's start treating this like something you could just jump into as a comics fan. And let's see how many people we can get in. And then at the end of our first year, we got an Eisner nomination for Best New Series. Something that Star Trek's never gotten an Eisner nomination at all, let alone for like one of the big awards. That was insane for us. We were shocked. We never expected that in a million years. But it was such a validation of everything that Heather Antos and Chris Cantwell and Colin and I, who, we sort of designed the approach on Heather's challenge, and then Cantwell came in and just blew it out of the water. We all built this thing that we all felt like, damn, like this engine works, and we can make a 32 issue run out of this alongside a 28 issue run on Defiant or something like that. Like by the end of this, it's like 70 some odd issues of Star Trek that have been written by our teams and Sons of Star Trek. Like Morgan Hampton came in and wrote with us, or wrote for us, or wrote himself. Like it was incredible. He just was like, I love Jake Sisko, and we were like, go. And we got to make this great thing, and we got to put it down. And at the end of the day, I look at that book and I say, I think we just wrote the book for every Star Trek fan who ever wanted a great Star Trek comic, right? For every person who's been wondering, what could you do if you did Next Gen 2, DS9 2, Voyager 2, TOS 2, if all this stuff all met together and made one big, great sequel story, what would that look like? And we did it. And we did it about as well as I think we could have. I'm so proud of that book. I just think I will put it on the shelf next to any licensed book ever written and be like, I think we did it just about as well as you could. I love that book. We got done with that. And we said, what's the final frontier, right? What's the thing we actually haven't been able to do on Star Trek? And what are we looking for in our own lives? What are we as creators in a space to do now that we weren't before? And we've been doing so many big 2 books, and we've been looping on ourselves so much, and we've been stressing out. We've been writing a book a week, and it's become a bit of a grind.
It's crazy, yeah.
And we needed to step back from that grind and remember the thing that we loved about books. And that was happening at the same time as you could see the Ultimate and Absolute lines starting to come together. Right? We were hearing rumors about that in the back. We knew people who were working on it. And we were seeing that happen. And we were like, those are such beautiful initiatives because they invite people who don't give a shit about Martian Manhunter to come and read a Martian Manhunter book.
Right.
And why are they reading Absolute Martian Manhunter? Why is Absolute Martian Manhunter selling like absurd numbers, right?
Yeah.
Because it's good.
It's really
and because it's accessible. Because it's good and because it's accessible. Because I don't need to know anything. I don't even need to like superheroes. No. I can just like stories. Yep. And this book is going to tell me about this FBI agent and this weird alien in his head, and it's going to tell me
it's a noir book. I mean, it's like a crime noir. Yeah, that's all it is.
It's just a straight up, and anybody can get noir. That's not a genre. That's like a tone. Yeah. So we looked at that, and not like it wasn't reactive. We were doing it at the same time. Right. But I was seeing what they were doing while we were figuring out what we were doing, and it felt like it felt like we were right on the same path as a lot of our compatriots. But rather than doing it with superheroes, we are doing it with Star Trek. Awesome. Star Trek: The Last Starship is our attempt in many ways to do Ultimate Star Trek or Absolute Star Trek. Not to take it back and tell you a brand new story with the same characters. Not to do, hey, here's Ultimate Kirk and Ultimate Spock and Ultimate Bones. No. Yeah. We're going to create a brand new cast of characters. We're going to set it in an era that no other Star Trek has ever been set in by hundreds of years to either side. So that we don't need to worry about continuity. We don't need to worry about you knowing what anything means. We're going to get Adrian Bonilla, who is just insane.
He's new, but he's blowing people's minds. He's
one of Carmen's proteges. So we knew that we were like in a really good vibe with him because he's a friend of Carmen. Mm-hmm. And we all got together and said, what happens if we do the best, most accessible, most look outside your window and see a story about what's actually going on in the world kind of Star Trek we can. And that's where Last Starship came from. A story about what happens when everything we know about Star Trek dies. And the people who are left behind have to figure out how to pick up those pieces and reassemble it somehow. It's this is Last Ronin for Star Trek. This is a way for us to take a thing that I think for a lot of people is fully unapproachable and say, welcome in, enjoy. This one's for you. And if it's for the real heads too, awesome. I think Star Trek fans will show up. I think they will see the love for it. I think there's stuff they'll pick up that obviously new readers won't. The same way that you can say Clayface's real name in or a Killer Croc's real name in Absolute Batman, and people will be like, "Oh man, it's going to be a Killer Croc story." We'll have stuff like that, but by and large, this is going to be about getting you on board something brand new and something that ideally hits you in the place that the best comics do, not in a place where Star Trek does. So that evolution from we're doing Star Trek the cover version to we're doing Star Trek the comics version to now we're doing Star Trek for everyone. And I think that's really, and like very much our Star Trek. Has been a really beautiful evolution, and one that I can't believe we've gotten to do all these years.
Yeah, we like to call it also, it's like Star Trek on HBO, right? Is the other kind of way we like to approach it. But I think, with the obvious exception, like brand new, and this cast is brand new, the ship is brand new. The age that we're playing in is, as Jack pointed out, like something that's never really been touched. It's brand new. Obviously, the headlines to all the announcement are Kirk is back.
Yeah,
Kirk is back. Which you're like, bros, you just said the exact opposite of that. And yes, look, the thing that we all know how marketing works. Yeah, right? And that's the headline. Hey, his beautiful face is right behind you on that poster. Yep. The crazy thing is that people don't yet realize is how it happened means that is not the Kirk they know. Right. Like that's the fun thing. Even when we're like, that's Kirk, it's like, did you hear us when we said all new characters? Yeah. Because we are not lying to you. Right. But that is a gray area that we don't really need to mess with in terms of the headlines. But for the real heads like y'all, like that's how we are not lying to you. We just we're not saying that. I mean, that's a big. It's fine hairs to split, but it's fucking important because this is not just the return of a kick-ass Captain Kirk who's here to save the day. Right? It's so much more complicated than that, and. It's really every single issue. We just wrote an issue 3 that ended in one of those ways that like was not in outline 1, was not in outline 2, was not in pagination. Hit it. We wrote the outline, the ending, and we're like, this is fucking wrong. And then Jack was like, what if it comes from left field? And it's like, holy shit, this is what the characters want, not what we need. And like that means that you're cooking with gas as a creator when the characters start to kind of leap off the page and tell their own stories. You really just become a conduit to get a little spiritual for you for a moment. But like that's how you know that you're really hitting something sweet. So we are just insanely proud of this book. It's gonna light people's asses on fire. And ideally, if you are a fan of Martian Manhunter, if you're a fan of those noir detective stories, that is very much the energy that we are lensing in on. Obviously, this is also a grand space opera, but there's no reason that the tight, dark, shadow, contained storytelling of a classic noir can't be lathered all over it. And also, if you're a fan of other space franchises, right? If you're a Battlestar Galactica fan and you always thought, oh, Star Trek is for nerds, it's like, buddy, come play in our water. Right, like, oh, I like Star Wars, but Star Trek is all carpets. It's like no carpets. Like, come on over because we're gonna be blowing shit up, but not in the way that a lot of our previous Star Trek books have been. I love explosions on the partnership. Jack has a respect for explosions, but like literally, I'm like, I just will put on a 4-hour explosion video on YouTube and just cackle maniacally, right? Yeah. This book will scratch that itch. But that is never going to be the point, right? Like we are going for your feelings. We want you to cry. We want you to sit back in your chair and say, truly, is this the nature of the human condition? That's the explosion. We are trying to set explosions off inside of you rather than just on the page. So trying to blow your mind. That being said, trust me, the explosions are so fucking cool. We got some primo explosions. Trust me.
Do you have swords? Are there any swords in the story?
Yes! Oh yeah. Yes, in fact, there's a sword. In fact, there are in issue 3 alone. There are 2 separate sword beats that are my favorite sword beats we've ever written. All right. There's a sword beat that our editor texted us as she read it and was like, "Wait, what?" We're like, "Yeah, how cool is that?" So it's very exciting.
I feel like 2 things I want to say. I feel like 1, I was just pitched like the book towards me. Yeah, as you were talking, because you hit all the words.
Chris is gonna read it now. Yeah.
2, I now have it in my head that Jackson's sitting down, like trying to write something, and like I have this great character moment. And now Colin just in the background and make it blow up, blow it up.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. That's not far off from the dynamic.
That's
like
awesome.
a lot of times the dynamic with us, it's not always. Again, there
Not
really
always.
is no set dynamic.
We've been writing together for 15 years, so we truly have started to merge. But like, there was a time where you just narrated the room, my brother.
Yeah, I think in a deeper way to give that an honest answer, I think part of the way that we at least still function to some degree is that I will always be happiest when it's just two people in a room talking. That's just still who I am. That's never going to fully change. I'm most comfortable in those kind of scenes. And Colin is always much more comfortable in a scene where you can turn the gas up and make it tense or exciting or thrilling. He's always going to be looking for that thing that's like, hey, but like, why do I stay here for more than 2 minutes? Right? Why am I still here? And I think that that's one of the reasons why we work really well together is that set on its own, I think my instincts can lead to kind of interminable stuff. I think it can lead to stuff that's a little bit more like only here for me. And in the same way with Colin, I think if you just get Colin stuff, you're going to get stuff that's kind of only here for him. And there's parts of that that are going to be great in both cases. But I think we're individually really interesting writers, and very occasionally we exercise those muscles, and probably will over the course of our lives. But I think the thing that really became special about the way that we functioned was that we saw that when we worked together, it was better. That when we worked together, there was stuff that I would never do that ends up in the work, and I look at it and I go, "Damn, that's cool," and vice versa, you know?
Oh yeah.
And I think that part of it, like, I'm glad he watches that explosion video on YouTube, because that's not something I would do. In the same way that I imagine he's very glad that I'm sitting here watching 4-hour fucking politics documentaries, because that's the stuff that I'll bring. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to bring more to the thing than you would a single individual writer. And while that can sharpen off some of the edge of like, oh, this is really idiosyncratic, this is just one person's thing, I think at the same time, it really does. It has its own idiosyncrasy, which is our friendship.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Really well said, my guy. Really well said.
I know we're getting close on our time, Mike. I had 2 more things I wanted to bring up. Did you have anything before we?
Yeah, I mean, I know you wanted to ask some things, Chris. I just wanted to ask, because you talked about create your own stuff. I loved Principles of Necromancy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And that's not, I would say that's kind of off your beaten path of this stuff. You don't really write a lot of blood, gore, body dysmorphia.
That's why we had to get in there and get it while the getting's good.
Any chance you're going to get into something of that style again, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's a good chance. There's a good chance that there's more Principles. Principles 2 is something we all want to do. It's something Magma wants to do.
Okay,
cool. In fact, we were literally on the cusp of it when the Diamond bankruptcy happened. The Diamond bankruptcy has really screwed up a lot of things in this industry. And one of those is the ability for small press to do its job. So
no one was ever happy with Diamond as a company, but it turns out when your monopoly collapses, there's a lot of collapse that goes on.
And
I can imagine.
So that has really led to some pretty terrible news on a lot of fronts for a lot of people. And for us, it was that Principles would take longer to put out. That said, we're having some conversations right now about how to do it and how logistically it happens and how to make it function. So suffice to say, that story's not over. We know what the next volume is. We're ready to go on it. We were within weeks of writing it. So it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
So we are certainly not at all known for it in comics, wildly enough. Outside of comics, where actually most people know our work from the kind of like more thriller, action, horror side of things. We love superhero stuff, and it's hard to get too many explosions into a tight horror story, right? Like, trust me, I've tried. But that is where a lot of our writing impulses live. So yes, we don't get to do that kind of stuff. People probably saw it in Clayface.
I was going to say
that's the closest we've been able to kind of write, and that's probably our most personal. There you go, baby. That's probably, wildly enough, our most personal work.
Because it's related to Hollywood, right? I mean, I felt you guys are like bleeding on the page there.
We were very much. And that's because when Colin says like, who knows us outside of comics, like, it's all movie executives. That's who knows us outside of comics. It's people who work in movies who've been reading our work for 10, 15 years, because we started as Hollywood guys. So as we kept that sort of premise going, we have 2 active projects right now that I think are brilliant. I hope they happen. You never know with this stuff,
right?
But I think if you look at both of those projects, you'll see a lot more tension and horror. Not like full horror. We've written a couple of horror movies over the years. I don't think we're ever going to be like,
we're never going to be your Paranormal Activity guys.
Yeah, and I don't ever think we're going to be your James Tynans. Like, I love James. He's one of our closest friends in this industry. I really admire what he does, and I admire the fact that he can turn it on and off. I'm never going to get quite, I think, to the level that he is at in terms of like comfortability with living inside of a horror framework. I'm always going to look for a drama framework that puts horror on top of it. That's what Clayface is, I think. You know, I reckon Clayface is a lot closer to the player or the studio than it is to Paranormal Activity. It just happens to have a lot of horror on top of it.
Right.
But, you know, especially as you get into creator-owned, part of the point is to flex your muscles. I don't think we have a creator-owned superhero pitch. I don't know how we do it. Our creator-owned stuff is the one I did was horror-flavored, which was Freak Show. Like, over time, it's really been a matter of us looking at it and saying, what do we have to say outside of the big two dialectic? And I think that's, you know, Principles is a great example. With Wolf is a great example. Both are horror stories in their own way. The thing that we are cooking up right now is unabashedly a horror. It's full scale. Like it's a different kind of horror, but it's a horror.
It's got a couple good explosions too, so we thread that needle.
Good, I'll still be entertained then.
And then we have a lot of science fiction we're cooking up. I think we're a lot more comfortable in science fiction than people know. Because our Guardians was very unscience fiction coded for a lot of reasons, and Star Trek is Star Trek, and so it kind of goes without saying. But I'm really excited to deliver some original science fiction to this market in a place where I feel like it's been kind of an ignored genre for a while and hasn't gotten quite the love that horror has gotten. And as people who really came up on Ian Banks and William Gibson and Neil Stephenson. And Arthur C. Clarke, and the list goes on. I think we're really excited to engage some of those muscles in the days and years to come.
Yeah,
that for me is great to hear because I love science fiction, and I would love to see you guys. And I think even when you go back to your Captain America, where you first started your Bucky Barnes stuff, it has very heavy sci-fi vibes in the first couple of runs.
1000%.
Yeah. And you see a lot of those projects on Kickstarter right now doing so well. It's because I think it's lacking in all the other publishing. Really.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like, you know, when you talk to someone, they're like, I don't know where to get into comics. It seems like there's all these like hypersexualized unitards. And it's like, my guy, comics, if there's a movie you like, there's a comic for it, right? Like if there's a kind of storytelling you like, go get it from your local comic shop. And supporting that kind of storytelling is really how we're going to grow this industry. Love Flights and Kites, but it's like, look, you got... There's 70 years and an ongoing panoply of Flights and Tights. Like, please, like, let's do some other stuff and get a little weird. And
that's my favorite thing to do is when I talk to somebody and they're like, "Well, I don't really like superheroes." Like, well, what do you like? I like fantasy and sci-fi. All right, here's Saga.
Yeah,
like, or whatever the book is, and there's something out there for you. It's
100%.
But I will bang this drum. I keep banging this drum. There are no baseball comics.
I know
comics,
and we are hot trash on romance comics.
Was it who had the one baseball comic this year, Chris? Was it Vault or no?
Oh no, Mad Cave has the baseball vampire comic. That's really good.
Baseball vampire comic. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna eat my hat.
We got one this year. Yeah, we got one. Yeah.
No football comics though.
Wait a minute. Vampire baseball? Isn't that just the opening of Twilight?
It's not Twilight. It's not
Twilight.
That was the best part of Twilight.
There's so much. No, it is not. None of those people have any idea how baseball works.
No,
it drives me absolutely insane. It doesn't even. This is an old gripe that once again you have pulled the scab off of. But
I could talk
all
about
the things you confuse baseball with. Werewolf baseball, we've never seen that before.
No.
Gilman baseball, never seen that before. Werewolves? I mean, vampires? Okay, anyway.
So Colin's upset.
I'm upset now.
It's okay.
I gotta go watch some explosions and cool down.
So you basically answered one of the questions, which I really wanted to see more creator-owned stuff from you guys, because I feel like when you do jump into that space, it's really well done. And I'm really happy to hear good things about possibly the future of Magma, because I was enjoying some of their stuff, including Principles. And
they're fantastic.
Yeah, I love that Rome Eternal book was so good, and I want it to continue. So I'm hoping they make it out on the other side and can keep making these books.
We're all fingers crossed for Magma.
Yeah. So my other question, when leading up to this interview, you know, we're always thinking about what to talk to our guests about, and I think every time you guys have been on, we've asked about this particular property, and I thought this time was the time I don't ask about it. And then about Tuesday, Funko announced some new pop figures based on your version of Batman Beyond. So I have to ask.
Wait, you guys know
that's new information to me. Really?
Hey guys, we are the Fortress of Comic News. We did one thing today. Let's provide you.
Hold on, please hold while this.
Since when? What?
These guys are pre-ordering it right now, Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, trust me, I'm waiting because I will buy anything Batman Beyond. 100%. I have all your action figures from your run.
Thank you.
And Beyond Funko.
Oh yeah, they did the wings.
Yeah. Yep. And even did the villain you guys Blight.
Oh no, Blight's not ours.
Blight's not ours.
I know Blight's from the series, but I'm saying they did Blight as part of it.
That's cool.
Sick. But yeah, they did the wings, which is sick as fuck. Love that.
That's our wings. Yep.
Hell yeah.
So I sat there, I saw this announcement, I was like, I guess I gotta ask.
All right.
Is your Batman Beyond dead?
I think our Batman Beyond is done. Yeah. I wish the answer was no. I know the guys who are doing the next Batman Beyond thing. They're rad. They're awesome. Okay. I actually got to spend a weekend talking about it with the artist. I think it's going to be some really incredible stuff. And I think spiritually very similar to what we're doing, but set in a different point of the continuity. So it's not like a sequel to ours. I think that the Neo saga, whatever we want to call that, like the Neo period of the character, that sort of being the post-Bruce death, Terria solo Batman framework is something that we would love to return to. Mm-hmm. I think if we ever return to it, it's going to have to be coded as a brand new thing, because I think you get this deep away from something, it's really hard to come back with a sequel. And so while we had a third volume that we really wanted to do, I think due to a lot of editorial changeover at DC during the period of time when that was a thing we could have done, there just was no appetite for it. We tried really hard and basically just kept hitting a wall. So I would love to say that there's more of that on the horizon for us. There is some DC stuff on the horizon for us, but it's not with Terry. So hopefully someday. We do know what that third volume is.
Yeah, man, we know what that third. It has the best explosions. It is going to have the most incredible.
It has one really extremely awesome explosion. It's true.
I will say that, I mean, part of that series you did handle, joking aside with Colin and his explosion obsession, like you said, interacting with everything and having these big fight scenes and hitting the points throughout the fights, that was treated very well throughout the series too. So I mean, that was a lot to handle going on at once.
Max
explosion the sides, right?
Max Dunbar is a magician.
That action. Too. Yeah,
he's so good at it, and he's really good at everything. Like Max is just incredible in general. And that's the other thing is we would really only want to do it if we were doing it with Max. Like it would be great to do it with somebody else,
right?
Sure, but first choice on that book is always going to be Max Dunbar, and Max got out of comics for a while. So it was also a period where he was working at Wizards. We were working on a million Marvel books, and the editors who were really loving and supporting, the editor basically behind Clayface and Batman Beyond was a guy named Dave Wheelgoes. He left. And so when Dave left, he sort of he and Ben Abernathy got Outsiders set up, and they did Batman Beyond with us, and they did Clayface with us. And then both of them left the company within a few months of each other.
Oh, damn.
And I think during that period, we just sort of, our editors at DC were gone. Like we had one new editor there who's wonderful, Jess Burby. She was the editor on Outsiders, and she's fantastic. But her portfolio is not what our old editors' portfolios were, and so we just didn't have the same kind of end to make great new work.
I will say it was wild. Like I was in Target with my fiance at the time, and I remember I saw the little action figure combo.
Yeah, man.
Combo, and I looked at, I said, Lanzing Kelly. She's like, what? I'm like, I know those guys. They're really cool. And she's like, oh, whatever. I'm like, their stuff's on a shelf in Target. That's crazy. Like
up on this shelf at the top of that shelf, there on that bookcase, you might be able to see him. Is the Terry from our run, because they did the actual
they did the actual big
Max Dunbar redesign figure, and that was just a joy. Like I'm so psyched that they made a Neo Gothic figure. Neo Gothic is one of those books that I'm just really proud of, and I feel like people slept on it a lot more than they slept on Neo Year. I would really like for people to be able to go back to that book and check it out, because I think it does a lot of things that are pretty rad and a lot harder to do than what we did on Neo Year. So just from a personal, those things where it's like, those games where you played great and you don't feel like anybody gave a shit. Yeah. That one is like, man, I really feel like we played great on that game.
Well, and I would say, I'm going to bring it all full circle here, because I would say Batman Beyond fans like Chris and myself are almost similar to Star Trek fans. Is like, we need content, and the way you guys handled it was, you did a great job.
And as much as I love the cartoon and I love the comics that are basically trying to relive the cartoon, they're great.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was nice to see someone come in and, like you guys said earlier, take a swing, because it could have crashed and burned. Like, you're getting rid of one of the key components of Batman Beyond, which is old Bruce Wayne being the mentor.
Yep.
And to see you do that and grow the character further, and for me to love it the way I did, was great as a fan, because I'm like, this character I've had since I was a child. I was there when those were premiering on,
Same, my
on
man,
TV.
right?
Yep.
It's like, let him grow up. I'm a full ass man now.
Yeah.
Like, let Terry drink at a bar. Let him be let him age up just a little bit.
It was great to see, and that was done well. So to hear that maybe it didn't sell as well saddens me as a fan. But
well,
it's hard, man.
Yeah.
Comics are hard.
Comics are hard. I think sequels are hard. I think in general, if it had been Batman Beyond Neo Year issue 7, I think it would have been a different story. But the fact that it took some time, we relaunched with a new number 1, which should really increase that viability. But then that new number 1 comes along with, okay, so Bruce is dead, new thing, did all this new stuff. There's a new costume. All that stuff is a lot to pick up if you're kicking off. And then on top of that, that Neo Year was really designed to be a reflection of a lot of very high selling Batman work, like Year 1. Neo Gothic was much more in the vein of Batman the Cult, or of Morrison's Batman run, the sort of horror psychedelic vibes. And we had a Court of Owls thing in there, but we didn't reveal it until the end of issue 2. So just from a marketability perspective, I think that there was a little less for people to hang their whole hat on the beginning of that.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you were super into punk coded cat people, I'm not sure how much we get. Which I mean, agree, right? That's my whole thing.
It's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, what is Batman? I mean, look, and I love explosions and I love magic.
Yep.
So, this was a story to take Batman and put him somewhere that he shouldn't have been, right? Kind of pulling him into that magic world feels like a really innovative and interesting place to take a Batman, right? And then obviously unpacking all of Bruce's old villains, everything that he's buried down here, thematically, character-wise, elements, it all fucking cooks. But then, much like our Guardians, sometimes it's for the real heads, right? The people who get it fucking get it and love it and will tell everyone about it. Mm-hmm. And the casuals might bounce.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys have been, so gracious and generous with your time today that Chris, unless are you good?
No, I'll just say that as well. And if nothing else, I think you've sold everybody out there, and myself, who Mike's made jokes when you were talking, not a Star Trek guy.
Yeah.
Interested in Last Starship after this
conversation. Last Starship, September 24th goes on sale. Pre-order deadline August 18th, folks. So hit your local comic shop.
And if you're if you're curious about it and you happen to be at San Diego Comic-Con, we are going to have a first glimpse at the book available there in a way that you can take with you. Like we're really doing everything we're kind of going back to our roots when we did Joyride originally, back before we ever thought anybody would let us do Star Trek ever. Colin hand printed this little black and white zine.
I've seen those.
I abused my company's Xerox machine
of a preview story that never got published. Otherwise, it was just in this zine, and we gave it away at the convention at Boom to anybody who was interested in the book, so that they could see, hey, this is the quality of material you're going to be getting, but in black and white, in a much more DIY fashion. IDW is going to be doing a version of that with Last Starship that I think is really going to show people, hey, this is something special. Awesome. I'm really, that was sort of the icing on the cake for us, was not only are we going to get to launch this in the sort of lead up to San Diego Comic-Con with all the Kirk stuff, but then at San Diego, I think that's when we get to start talking about this book absent Kirk. What is this book and why is it and what's cool about it? So I can't wait for people to see that preview, because I think it's going to be a great representation of, hey, we're aiming at something different.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Can't wait.
Yep.
If our lovely fans, listeners, and viewers want to follow you guys, where do you want to send them for social media? Do you have a Hivemind social media? Do you want to?
We do. Hivemind Actual. That's 2 words, no spaces. Hivemind Actual, like Battlestar or Galactica Actual from Battlestar Galactica. Same frame. Hivemind Actual, you can find us on any platform. We are posting through there all the time. We have our personal accounts, but they're pretty much dead at this point. They're really just there for occasional pop-outs and when we want to do a Q&A or something. If you really want to follow the work and know when to pre-order the books, please check out Hivemind Actual. We're going to have, especially on Instagram, we're pushing FOC updates and all kinds of stuff out of that anytime. Plus,
we do giveaways. We do
and all kinds of stuff.
Sick. That's awesome.
And to everybody out there watching, listening, check out the show notes. I'll have all that social media laid out for you. And I'll find, whether it's the IDW website, we're in kind of a Wild West right now for this, but I'll find a link so you can check out the Last Starship online real quick. And usually it'd be the preview page, but I'm not sure what previews is doing anymore. So we'll figure out something new.
Yeah.
Guys, as always, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And I'll just look forward to next time and look forward to see what get announced at San Diego for you too.
Thank you, Chris, Mike.
Absolutely, buds. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.